I'm John Hernandez. Today I have one of the most gifted guitar players I have heard in a very long time. I have the mighty Scott Gailor hanging out with me. Scott, thanks so much for hanging out today, buddy.
Hey, John. Thank you for having me.
All stories have to begin somewhere. Let's go back a little ways. What made you want to become a musician in the first place?
Oh, actually, that's easy. My mom had a rule in the house that everybody played an instrument and played a sport, and she thought it would help us, our mind develop and stay focused. And my older brother played guitar, and he still does very, very well. And we all played instruments. And I was lucky enough to grow up in a time where they were offered in school and fairly affordable. So I started piano and then went to violin and then went to trumpet, with the whole time begging for a guitar. And I would always take my brother had this beautiful Martin. I'd always take his Martin and bang on it till he'd come home and get mad. So I finally went and, after some doing some yard work and things, and bought my own little $50 beater. And my mom saw that I was serious, so I started with lessons. And that was probably, I want to say I was about 9, and that was it. I've had some sort of instrument in my hand since I was 5. So it's just how it was supposed to be.
Very cool, very cool. Well, what music drove you back in the day?
Oh man, I'm the last of 7. So I grew up in a house where one room was disco, one room was the Grateful Dead, one room was, Jimi Hendrix, another one might have jazz. My mom every Sunday would play either Frank Sinatra or Kenny Rogers. It was actually kind of funny how well I know those two particular artists inside now. And early on, it was Jimi Hendrix and Jeff Beck. I mean, that was just the be all end all. And then I studied with Ricky Bruno when I was growing up, and he turned me on to Frank Zappa and Miles Davis. And then all my friends, it's weird. I grew up in a really small town, but on our block, 4 of us played guitar. So it would be, oh man, have you heard the new Alex Lifeson lick, or did you hear the new Michael Schenker lick, or the new Gary Moore thing, and of course all our minds got blown when Ingve came out, or things like that, and it was so cool because my best friend at the time was Peter Prince, and we would get together. We lived behind each other, so to speak, on the same street, and we would just get in Peter's garage or my attic type thing, and we would just play. And of course, we were terrible, but we would just tear apart whatever we could figure out, and we'd teach each other, and you'd be pulling stuff off records, and it was really magical, man. It was so much fun, and you can't even. It would take me 4 days to tell you everybody who's an influence, because if you play with any sort of passion, I'm into it, and that's all it is. That's all it takes.
Very cool. Well, all that different, influence you have has really, grown you as a musician. But, and then so you started there, and then you've done some killer bands like Union Jack, Kid Havoc. I would love to get a little bit of background on that.
Union Jack was Paul Duncan's band, and Paul and I met in Florida in junior high, or I'm sorry, high school, not junior high school. And I only was in high school in Florida for like a minute and a half, it seemed like, for a couple of months. And Paul and I, typical kids, we were both the long hairs in the school for a minute, and I was chewing on a pick. I used to have this bad habit of chewing on guitar picks. And so he's like, "Oh, you play guitar?" I was like, "Yeah." And he started this thing, and he moved back to New York, and he put together Union Jack. And I happened to call him and said, "Oh, I'm going to go on the road with a thrash band called Nuclear Assault. I was going to be Dan Liker's tech." And I said, "I'm going to be in New York at L'Amour's on this and this date." And I'm barely 17 years old. I'm so excited. He's like, "Well, screw that. Just come play with us instead. You can live at my place and be in the band." And that's it. That's all it took. That's how quick the conversation and decision was made. And I remember going home and telling my mom, I'm done, and I'm going to go move to New York City and play music. And she was like, "Okay." And I packed up my car and got a U-Haul and scraped together about $80 and moved there. And the band was phenomenal for being 17. I mean, two 17-year-olds and two 18-year-olds. And we hit the ground running up there and really had a good run. I mean, you listen back to the demos and it's like, wow, we couldn't write songs, but we put on a great show, and it was almost the wrong way to go about it, because I didn't pay my dues playing covers and all those things. Our first gig was, the Cat Club and Streets and L'Amour's and the Ritz and all these crazy great places, and this amazing scene You kind of think of like LA and New York as the pro leagues. You know, you're not slugging it out in North Carolina or somewhere. No offense to North Carolina, I don't mean it in disrespect, but those are like the big boy leagues. And I was so young and naive, I didn't have any clue of that. I just went up and played and ran around and acted a fool. And we had a great chemistry, but when you give kids that young that much clout, it tends to cloud things. So from there, I went and played with a band called Remington for a few minutes. And then I did my own thing in New York for a little while, and I could not find a singer for the life of me, which is odd being in New York City, but I was really picky. And a good friend of mine in Florida, Jeremy Timmons, goes by Jeremy Childs, said, "Hey, it's wintertime in New York. I need somebody to record on a demo. I'll pay for you to fly down and, you know, get out of the cold for a couple of weeks." I was like, "Oh, hell yeah." So no fly. He sent me a bus ticket, I might add. So I still bust his balls on that. Took a bus trip to Florida with my stuff and recorded a demo and went home. Went back to New York and started kept looking for singers. Matter of fact, anybody's interested, those demos that I made without vocals from when I was 18 are up on Bandcamp right now. They won't be up there forever. So if you want to hear an 18-year-old me, there they are. But Jeremy brought me back down to do some gigs to help him showcase and just talked me into moving down permanently. And so my now wife was my girlfriend at the time, and we packed everything up and moved down here. And she's got family here, and we've never left, but I've always gigged. So Scrooge did his thing for a long time, did all the stuff, and the Florida scene was booming. You had all the big bands kind of clicking, and you know, typical thing. We were doing really well. We got nominated for a bunch of stuff, and we were packing out places, but we just couldn't get signed. And so we made the decision to switch singers, and so that became the birth of Kid Havoc, and that's when I kind of took the reins on that. And Kid Havoc was always John and I, the singer, and a revolving door of rhythm sections, unfortunately. And we had some great rhythm sections, but at that point in my career, I guess, I was a bit of a drill sergeant because I'd just been through. I've toured so much and played so much, and I wanted things. I mean, just airtight. I didn't want any mistakes. I didn't want stuff. And we had a big show, and we had banners, and we had backdrops, and we had merch. And now that's common. You can go see that on any band. But in that era, when we were doing it, it wasn't common. And it definitely wasn't common in Florida. I can count the number of bands on one hand that were doing it the way we were doing it at the time. And, you know, I was probably a pretty rough to work with in those spots. I don't blame some of the switches, but I was lucky enough because of it, though, to work with some great players that I'm still really good friends with. And we got back together in 2006 because Sun City, the record label out of Australia with David Moore, bought our demo was selling for crazy money on eBay, which still baffles me. And he got a demo and decided he wanted to put it out, and we ended up doing one more record. And then that's kind of where we're at now.
That's awesome. What a story. You know, that is really cool. Okay, you have a brand new album you've put out. I dare say a solo album called Technicolor Monochrome. I would love to hear just that. Let's start with the basics. When did the idea come for it? How long did it take for you to write it? All the good stuff.
Well, okay. 2004, I did Guitarmageddon, and I did it as a favor. A buddy of mine who's since passed away, my buddy Rob, rest in peace, he was working at Guitar Center, and he needed at Guitar Center they have like quotas to hit for certain things, and he needed to get so many people signed up for Guitarmageddon. And I had no interest in doing a guitar contest because I did one in '89 called Guitar Wars, and I did really well, but guitars aren't an Olympics. There shouldn't be a gold medal at the end of the rainbow. You're not going to tell me Albert Lee is better than Eddie Van Halen or Eddie Van Halen is better than Alan Holdsworth. They're all great. And long story short, that's a soapbox, but I did it as a favor to Rob just so he could get the sign up. I had no intention of showing up. I went there that night, was lucky enough, picked a song off the CD that you're going to play to, listened to it in the car on the way there, didn't practice it, and I won that night. And I was like, okay, so now I have to really show up. And I took it all the way to the regional finals, made it to the final 9 guys in the country, lost by half a point to go to the national 3 to play in front of Steve Vai and Clapton and those guys. So it lit a fire under my ass. It kind of got me going again to get out and play. And I thought, you know what, now's it. I've always wanted to do an instrumental record, but I'm also smart enough to know that Nobody cared that Eddie Van Halen can solo unless they could hear the songs that David were singing. Nobody goes to see a guitar solo. They go to see a band. I mean, there's exceptions with the Satrianis and the Vais, but for the most part, you and I know who Jason Becker is and Marty Friedman, but there's a ton of people who don't. I know more people will know who Roth is. So I decided I'm going to do this instrumental record right around then. But at that time, Kid Havoc picked up again. We played with Extreme and King's X and Yngwie and Dokken and Sebastian Bach and Rat and Cinderella and John Corabi, and I'm missing some names, but we played a bunch of really great, big shows, a few thousand people, stuff that you love to do. So that kept putting everything on the back burner. And finally, after the last Cinderella show, it was us. It was Cinderella, John Corabi, and us. I just said, that's it. I need to get this record done, and I'm not going to do anything until the record's done. Never say things out loud like that, because somebody will strike you and decide otherwise. At that time, I got a bunch of endorsements. I hooked up with Floyd Rose and Stone Tone and the Pickstrap and Conquest and all these people, and I started playing the NAMM circuit and doing videos for these guys and teaching. And so I'd get to record a bit here and record a bit there. And my studio partners, Daniel and Patrick, Daniel's a touring guy and a highly sought after touring guy in the hardcore scene. So he was always getting work. And yes, I could do it all by myself, but I also will do 10,000 takes and none of them will ever be good enough, where I trust Daniel and Patrick to say, okay, Scott, you're done. That's the take we're using. And I'll give you a good story on that in a minute, but I wanted those guys to be involved. So we started going hardcore about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. All those songs were new, with the exception of My True North, which is my old live guitar solo, but done the way I've always heard it in my head, and Tribal, which was on the second Kid Havoc record. We just remixed it, reprogrammed the drums, and lengthened the tail just a hair. There's a lot of work that went into that record, from the way we picked the tones to the gear that we used. And there's 2 one-take things in there. The Paddock is one take. It was the second take, so that's one take all the way through. And the solo on top of No Smoking section is all one take.
Wow, that's impressive.
Those were, and that the No Smoking section is one of those magical stories, and I have video to prove it. So if anybody wants to call me out, I have video. I went in to record that, and it was just a bunch of bad stuff was going on that particular week. Somebody passed away, and some other stuff, and I decided, which I don't normally do. I have a 74 Les Paul Standard. I took that in that night and said, all right, I'm going to play this, and I told Daniel, like, look, man, this is a blues tune. I'm just going to blow some cliches and let off some steam, and then we'll go through what's worked out. And he said, okay. So I hooked up an Octafuzz and a Clyde wah and just went to town. And then we got done. I was like, all right, let's do the other stuff. He said, no, that's what you're keeping. And I said, no way. He goes, no. He goes, you can sit on it. We can do whatever you want, but I want you to sit on it for a couple of days. And I played it as a couple people of mine that I trust, and they're like, you can't touch that. So we went in and fixed one note that was bugging the hell out of me, which I don't even know if we really fixed it. You'd have to ask Dan if that's legit. I think he might have just done that to shut me up. And we kept that. So, and again, that's the importance of me having people around me and pulling in the right direction, because that song would have went a totally different way. And I mean, it's against everything I do. It's a Les Paul versus the Strat bodies that I play. It's Octafuzz versus Overdrive. It's it's such a cool moment, and for a lot of my friends, they listen to it and they're like, that's you, that's the real you. So don't ever let that not happen again.
Right on, right. Well, the guitar playing on the album is phenomenal. What about the rest of the instruments? Do you have a band working with you, or do you play all the instruments?
No, I played everything on that record, except for the drums. Daniel programmed the drums, and not because of ego or anything else. It was just time and schedule. I know so many great players, and I would have loved to have made this greatest hits of my buddies, but so many of my friends are working guys, and it was hard to get everybody involved in different specs. So it was just simpler for me to go in, and I played bass on the last Kid Havoc record also. Not for any particular reason. Tommy just couldn't, not that he couldn't play, he just couldn't, he didn't have the time at that particular time. And so it was just quicker for me to do it. I'm a decent bass player, so I can pull it off. right now I have everything but a bass player for a live band. I just been scrambling trying to get some personal things together and find the right guy because the trick with this is I can find somebody who can play the parts on the record. That's easy. I'm not Billy Sheehan, so it's not like the bass lines are ridiculous. But I want to be able to turn around almost like a fish, like a Trey or a Zappa, and I know what I'm playing isn't in that area, and turn around and just say, okay, man, let's vamp on this, and have guys with enough talent to go, and maybe fuck with the audience head a little bit, and just play something that's not there, because the mood or the vibe might be right. I'd rather just go, and so it's really important that I can find a guy who has enough theory under his belt and can understand changes, but can also understand the groove aspect of it and just run with it. And that's been a little more challenging than I thought.
Very cool. So does that mean you're planning on doing some shows in support of this album?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I want to play as much as possible. Playing live is my favorite thing in the world. It's my safe place. It's my, like you said earlier, I'm kind of a mellow guy, and if you meet me, it's funny. I don't talk a lot and all those kind of things, but you put me up on a stage, and that's where kind of all my stress goes away, and I'm 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and I miss that. If I could play every night and make enough money to pay the mortgage, I certainly would. It's my favorite place to be for sure.
Very cool. I know you worked with Malleable Records on this. How did that come to be?
I'm a Conquest cable endorser, and so is Tom Allen. And Larry, who kind of put us all together at Winter NAMM 2014, I think. Uh, Something like that. I have to be honest with you, all the NAMMs blend in, but one of the other NAMMs, I met everybody, and so when the CD was done, I kind of just sent it out here and there to people to get reactions and see what people thought. And Tom immediately hit me back and made some suggestions, and I said, all right, well, I want to feel out some things, and I did a Kickstarter that did okay, but didn't quite hit the goal I wanted to go. And couple days after the Kickstarter ended, Tom hit me up and said, "Hey, man, we can do some stuff together." And we worked out something. And in this business, he's one of the few people that I trust. I'd let him watch my kids and give him the keys to my house. You know what I mean? And I've been in this business a long time, and he's one of the truest guys I've ever met, and I trust. So they've been great. They've helped get the physical CDs out the door, and I mean, he's one of the reasons I'm talking to you now, and you name it, he's helped me get a lot of different stuff. And the best thing with Tom and Malleable is this: if they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. I don't need to bother them 6 times. I don't need to say it twice. If they tell me, hey, tomorrow I'm going to paint the sky blue, I'm going to walk out tomorrow and see the sky blue. And that's a rare thing in this business anymore. So him and I work really well together, and I look forward to seeing what can happen down the road when this album cycle runs its course and I get to do another record.
Very cool. Well, and I got to iterate there too. Tom Allen was such an awesome guy. So is Larry over at Conquest Cables. Absolutely love Larry. He is just a brilliant guy. Very cool. Very cool. I did not know that's how that all fit together, but yes, two extremely just kick-ass guys.
Yeah, Larry is one of the nicest guys I've ever met in this business as well. I'm just, you know what, man, I'm pretty lucky. The guys on my endorsement list are what I call it the list that I use and abuse because stuff I beat the hell out of. But those guys, I'm lucky with the crew that I got. They're all great. They all do what they say. They all say what they do, and that's all I look for in this business because it's such a rarity with some of it that it's so refreshing to be on the phone with one of these guys and say, okay, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and it happens. I still get excited about that.
Right. Well, let's take a minute. Let's go down your endorsement list. What products does Scott Gailor endorse?
I'm going to do this in no particular order because I'm really horrible with this, but I'm a Floyd Rose endorser. I'm a Boulder Creek Guitars endorser. Cleartone Strings, Palm Beach Guitars. He does all my work. Positive Grid software. I use Bias and I use Jam Up Pro. Matter of fact, I've been using that at every NAMM. Flying V leather accessories. He makes all my straps. Matter of fact, he's making a great one for the green telly I'm having built right now. Swiss Picks, Big Ben's Nut Sauce, which is awesome. The Prime Vibe stuff. I don't know if you've seen that for the little transducers that age the guitar, age the tone wood.
Yes,
Very,
that's
very,
really cool.
And James over there is an amazing cat. Jay at Groove Gear is salt of the earth, man. One of the nicest dudes I've ever met. Plus the Groove Gear stuff, I don't let anybody in the studio without it now. And it's not about cheating and covering up your strings. It's about muting noise on the backside of the nut. I don't really use it on my neck like a Guthrie or a Greg Howe. I use it behind the nut to cover up the secondary tones. Um, let's see. Conquest cable, of course. My entire rig is that. Pick strap, which is really cool when I'm doing my 7 or 8 finger stuff. The strap locks in, and he's made it now so I can use that strap with any picks. Decibel 11 on my fly board and my smaller board, I use their palette and I use their looper so I can get 8 loops and really do pull out as much magic as I can when I can't bring my own big rig. And recently I've been working with dial tone pickups, which has been pretty amazing. They are onto something that is really going to change things for the studio guys and for the cover band guys. And last but not least is lock knob. They've got these cool knobs that go on top of pedals or anything actually that has a knob, amp, pedal, guitar, welding. They just put it on somebody's welder recently. And so I wear Harley boots, my old riding boots, when I play live, and this way I don't kick the knobs, which I have many times. This thing goes on top and locks it in place, so it's really badass. I hope I didn't miss anybody. I think that's pretty much everybody.
Very, very cool. You'd mentioned earlier Rob from Stone Tone. I'm really curious. I've talked to multi artists about this and what he's doing because it's something just completely insane if you think about it, because I'm not a real educated person, but using the granite blocks, and I know that you've had a lot of experience with that. I'm really curious what your take is on it.
Well, let me start at the beginning with this because I was going back and forth with Ronnie North, I believe, on. I want to go back as far as MySpace, if that will tell you how long this has kind of been floating about. And he was using those, and I dug it, and I didn't realize I knew Rob because it was just Stone Tone, it was just a company. But Rob used to take lessons after me from the same teacher I used to take, so we would run into each other here and there, and we know so many of the same people. Um, it's kind of interesting when and that's a whole, we could talk for 3 hours on that part alone. So once I finally figured out who it was, not who it was, but Stone Tone, I reached out and said, hey man, how much are the blocks? And he told me the price. And I was like, all right, I'm a musician like anybody else. I don't have a lot of money. So I was like, all right, I'm going to need to save up for a little bit and I'll hit you up when I'm ready. Come to find out, he knew someone I knew, and he came into a place I happened to be working at the time, and he gave me one. He's like, here, man, just check it out, and if you like it, pay me, and if you don't, just give it back to me. And I was like, cool. And I put it on. I've got a Charvel, and it's a parts. I call it my parts, or I call it my Nanocaster because it's the guitar that goes to every NAM with me. Because for a couple of reasons: one, it's bulletproof. B, if it gets stolen, it's not going to break my heart. It's a MIJ neck. I don't know if the body's American or Japanese, to tell you the truth. And we put a 16th of an inch maple cap on a poplar body. It's loaded with 3 JBs in it, a routed out Floyd, and a maple and rosewood neck, big frets. And it's a beast. It sounds great. But it never recorded well for some reason. It was my drop D guitar live, and Kid Havoc opened up with 2 songs in drop D, Dirty Money and Life You Save. And so, and the guitar looks stunning. It's a spalted maple top, and the lights hit it, and it's just gorgeous. But it never sounded great. It sounded good. And so I figured, all right, I'll throw it on there. I got nothing to lose. And it was like night and day. I've said it 100 times. I am not a scientist. I sound like one of the Republican candidates, but I'm not. I just know that I like shit that works and other stuff I don't. And I've tried brass and I've tried titanium and tungsten, and all that stuff is awesome. But for me, the biggest problem with brass was weight. We talked about that I played hockey earlier, and I've got a bum shoulder, so I don't like a ton of weight on my shoulder. Like if you ever see me live, I've got a huge Explorer and I've got a Les Paul. I don't play those live because I can't stand up with them for too long. So the granite is lighter, and it adds a different type of tone to it. To describe it in a technical sense, if anybody's familiar with the product of BBE, a sonic maximizer, it kind of does what that does for a guitar, and it takes a tiny bit of the mids out and kind of boosts the highs and the lows, but it makes the guitar more balanced and the harmonics really jump. And right now I've got it in 4 guitars. I've got an 86 Custom Shop Jackson Strat that it's in there. It's in the Nanocaster. It's in an '86 Charvel Model 6A, I believe, whatever the top end 6A. And then I've got another mutt that my buddy from the Dillingers gave me, and we don't know what it is. And Palm Beach Guitars built it. It's got stainless steel frets, rosewood fingerboard, big baseball maple neck, and it's sparkly silver with lipstick pickups.
Nice.
Oh, dude, it's so gaudy. I want to wear a bad tuxedo with it in like baby blue, like that bad prom thing. But the fucking thing is a beast. It sounds so good. And typical me, I broke the bridge because that's unfortunately what I do. And I sent it to Rob and said, "Hey, man, see what you can do with this." And he came back with this crazy contraption of it. And now I've got a whole brand new guitar again. So I know there's a lot of controversy with this particular product, but it's one of those things. And if you hear it, you will believe it. I mean, I was at NAMM. I put it in Dave Reffitt's hand. I put it in, George Lynch's hand. I put it in, of course, oh my God, I can't believe I can't think of his name right now. The guy from Megadeth, Chris Poland, and Greg Howland, all these guys, and spoke to him about it, and they all played my guitar and they all loved it. And I think it's one of those things, if you hear it and you listen to it, you'll dig it. And Rob's such a passionate guy that he puts his heart and soul into all of this, so it comes through in the way it sounds.
Very cool. Agreed. I love Rob. I think the guy is just brilliant. And I agree 100%. Okay, we talked about your new release, and you said you want to tour. Um, Once you get this rolling, what's next for Scott Gaylor?
Right now, I want to do. I know I'm already jumping the gun, but I'm working on an acoustic record. Believe it or not, I'm a huge fan of a cross between like Michael Hedges and Neil Young. I know that makes no sense, but it's going to be an instrumental record. It's going to be 6 songs. 3 songs are already done or written. They're not recorded, but this is going to be a real raw and easy record to record. We recorded the song "The Paddock" at Patrick's place. I guess I gotta bring this up to speed for a second. The three of us, Patrick, myself, and Daniel, all have separate studios. And if you combined all our studios together, it would be a ridiculous place. But we're all afraid to put it all in one place and get robbed or whatever that goes with it. So we all kind of float around to each other. So we did most 99% of the album at Dan's place, and then we did the Paddock, the acoustic stuff at Patrick's place because it's a different sounding room. And so this record would be the same thing. It would be done over at Patrick's, and it would be one take. The song will be. My goal is all 6 songs will be one take, no fixes, no punches, no overdubs, nothing, and finger picking, some two-hand tapping stuff. But it's not a look at me record. It's just a passionate. I have this side of me who, and this is my older brother's influence of me maybe being a cross between doing Bob Dylan and Neil Young. I'm a crazy Neil Young fan, and I love that strummy, protest song kind of thing. And I'm not a singer songwriter, but more that kind of folky thing. But if you imagine Michael Hedges playing folk, that's what I'm going to try to accomplish. And with respect to Michael's from, he's the godfather of all of this, of the guys of what Andy McKee are doing and everybody else. And I don't think Michael truly got his due, and he's getting it now a little bit. But man, just talk about someone who changed the way people play guitar. So hopefully I'll be able to capture a little his spirit and something like that. But that's the next recording end. I want to play live, and I put it out to my people, whether you want to call them my management or my agent or whatever. I just call them my family, that I want to work. So I'm looking for touring opportunities, whether as a sideman or myself. I'm looking to play in a band if it makes sense. I started teaching heavily, and I'm about to pick up a regular teaching gig, it looks like, in Palm Beach County, where I live. So I just want to continue to play and have fun. And I miss playing live, man. There's nothing better than playing live. So if I can get out there and play live, I will do it in a heartbeat.
That sounds awesome. Technicolor Monochrome. Where can people pick this up at?
If you want to get the physical CD, the only place right now is my website at scottgaylor.com. If you go to the buy link, it's $11 shipped right to your door. So it's only $1 more than a download, and you're getting the physical CD. And it's really cool. It's based on a couple things like that. Reminds me of the old TV I used to have when I was a little kid. And a good friend of mine took all those pictures in an abandoned apartment in New York City. And that's a real television, and that's real static on the screen. And that's a real wall. That's not Photoshop stuff. That's my boy just having a hell of an eye and getting it done. And then the picture of my favorite painting he did called the Katrina coaster, which is Pooch from from Pooch Island. In the When you take the disc out, you see when my arms wide open. That's standing underneath that picture. So there's a lot of cool stuff there. But at scottgaylor.com is the physical CDs. Right now, the only two outlets online to buy downloads are iTunes and eMusic. And it's cheaper on eMusic than it is on iTunes. So if you're a member there, you can save a couple bucks. And I also have download cards available at the website where it's still the same thing. It's $6, but I send you a card and you can have it signed if you want. And there's a bunch of option there. We haven't gone streaming yet. We've avoided the streaming thing for a little while just so we can get it out there. And there are some songs posted up at Bandcamp as well if you want to listen to them. I want to say there's My True North, The Paddock, Tribal, and Bodhisattva. Those are all up on Bandcamp.
Very cool, very cool. Scott, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. You are absolutely a brilliant artist and such just a great guy to talk to.
John, thank you so much, man. I had a blast, and